Hey guys, Isaac and Daniel from Team Snibby. I just got the new Fujifilm X-T4, which has amazing IBIS. So we thought we'd do some comparisons between that and the gimbal we've been using previously for when we want stable shots.
The one thing we dislike about gimbals is how hard it is to transport, and there's another battery that we have to try and charge, and when you're out in the middle of nowhere and you're trying to put it down and find somewhere where it's not going to fall over. So that's why we thought we'd test out handheld, monopod, and then the gimbal and see which footage comes out more stable. Okay, so we just checked out the footage together, and I don't know, I had some pretty high hopes after using it on a couple of shoots that it would be some sort of magical kind of gimbal killer, but
I think it is. I think for static shots, like with our shots of Max on the bed indoors, that was amazing without any IBIS or OIS or anything. The shot was really shaky, but as soon as I turned on IBIS, the shot was really smooth. So I think it was amazing for that.
Yeah.
But I found at the park when Daniel was trying to operate it as a gimbal, sort of orbiting around me and following me, it just couldn't compare with an actual gimbal. So,
yeah, exactly. Well, I think like the combination of IBIS and OIS together was actually really interesting to see. Like, I found IBIS was helping me with my roll kind of positioning as I was walking. Like, you can't help but left, right kind of roll. But then the OIS, when we sort of see that in its sort of by itself, it got rid of the little micro jitter that you get, like your hands are shaking, or as you walk, your Z-axis kind of up and down sort of movement. So those two together were really interesting. But in the park, the digital image stabilization, I felt like with those straight lines in the trees, you could kind of see them warping and kind of like not looking as best as they could be.
Yeah, so I found with the digital image stabilization that it punches in 1.1 times, which sounds like nothing, but I'd frame up a shot with a 90mm of say Max on the bed, and then when I turned on digital image stabilization, it'd sort of punch in enough that I've got to take a step back. So I didn't mind that too much, but it just sort of looked like a mediocre warp stabilizer where it had a lot of artifacts and everything in there. So I feel like I will never use the digital image stabilization in camera myself. Because I'd rather do it in post with warp stabilizer, which will take longer and then it's got to do it. But at least that way I can turn it off if it does look bad and have those warpy edges that we did notice when we were shooting.
Yeah, I'd hate to get in the computer and I had it on and then I'm like, oh my gosh, like that footage is ruined because it just looks like it's not like a layer in Premiere where you can just remove it, turn it off and go, oh, that's right, we'll just handle that little bit of shake and not have that weird digital kind of stabilization issue. So.
Yeah, the only time I can see myself using it is if I had to have instant turnaround, so there was no time for an edit at all, or if I was live streaming. So if I've got this plugged into a cam link and was streaming live and I had a really shaky camera, maybe then I'd do it because it's just a live stream and it'll sort of help a little bit there more than it's hurting. But yeah, definitely I felt like it was ruining the footage more than it was helping, so I won't use that. But the IBIS system, I'm loving it for static shots and it'll help for any sort of smooth handheld things, but it's definitely not a replacement for a gimbal if you want to move, like say if you're walking around or anything.
Yeah.
So I'm still definitely going to keep using my gimbal, but anytime I'm handheld, IBIS is going to save the day. And I feel like it makes my 56 and my 90 and even my 35 much more usable handheld than they were previously. The other trick I was doing for a lot of the shots today, including Max, is just doing this. So that way, as I'm filming, I've got the IBIS running in there. And then I've also got sort of a bit of extra stability there, which was for the tighter Max shots. And then for the wider ones, I was just resting it up against my body here. Again, so there's a bit more of a point of contact rather than just hand holding like this. So that probably helped as well. But yeah, still, even when I turned IBIS on versus off, it was a night and day difference. So even with that stabilization of my body, the IBIS system was still making a massive difference.
I actually found like having this top handle, like we did some running around with it down low and stuff, having that weight and that balance point actually was helpful as well. Like I didn't have to, you know, with my hands like this, I'm kind of a little bit tense and shaky, where I feel like I'm a little less tense and just letting it flow. And then that made the IBIS and OIS kind of, I guess, account for that nicely as well. Okay, so you did that interview piece with me.
Yeah, so a lot of what I shoot is talking head videos. So usually for those, I'll use a monopod. I like it because it's less effort to set up and move around and stuff than a tripod. And I also love that natural movement. So our first test was the normal monopod shot with no IBIS, and that looked great, as it usually does. We then turned IBIS on, and honestly, I found it made no real difference. Like it might be 1% smoother, but I couldn't really tell either way. So I'd happily still shoot those on my X-T4 if I'm using a monopod, and it wouldn't bother me at all. I wouldn't feel like I'm missing out. Then I tried a couple where I was shooting like this with my neck strap, and I shot that with IBIS, and it made a massive difference. It looked amazing. There were a couple of times where I think I might have moved enough that it got to the edge of where the IBIS sensor can go and had to reset. So there's a couple of times when you just see it correct a little bit, but 99% of the footage was great, and the IBIS really made a difference. And turning off IBIS and just going handheld with no stabilization, just like this, was pretty shaky and unusable. So I think IBIS makes handheld 10 times better. And it was so nice to be able to run around like this without having a big monopod hanging off it. So I feel like I could get lots of detail shots. Say if I was shooting for a small business, I could run around and get a whole bunch of shots really quickly without having to carry the monopod around or without having to cart a gimbal around. And you can get heaps of B-roll super quick.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of movement that you did, you got to the end of the kind of IBIS thing. I think, I mean, if you were hand holding without it anyway, you would notice that sort of sudden movement. So yeah. I think like, as much as I don't like that sort of digital kind of, like it's stable, and then it's like jerks over to the left or the right, I think you'd have worse kind of footage if you were to handheld without it.
Yeah, so and it doesn't happen much. So there's usually enough footage before the jerk or after the jerk that you've got something you can use for your B-roll sequence anyway. So yeah, I'm loving IBIS. I'm going to use it all the time.
Yeah, it's definitely cool.
It's definitely worth the upgrade from the X-T3 to the X-T4 just for the IBIS. It's a game changer.
So I guess bonus round for me, I wanted to see what it was going to be like inside of the car, because often I'm traveling, I'm doing a 4-drive show, or I'm, you know, going to the beach or something like that. And I wanted to see if you didn't have, you know, a gimbal, you want to take a really small kit with you, how could you get like really great footage that sort of tells the story of the travel. So obviously we started with a monopod, which is a fairly small item to have in your kit. It obviously helped dramatically with that sort of Z-axis up and down movement that's kind of like part of the bumps of the road. But without the monopod, I was actually surprised that well, not surprised, that obviously, you know, the IBIS and the OIS was really great at taking out those kind of up and down movements still.
We were shooting that with the Fuji 10-24 f4 lens, which
Yeah.
has inbuilt optical image stabilization. So that combined
That's right.
with the IBIS system, it was amazing.
And I find, like, you know, that 10mm kind of, it's going to be a little bit more favorable to like getting rid of that jerky kind of feel anyway. Like if I was at 70mm, obviously every micro movement's going to be exaggerated on the other end, but that 10mm with the OIS and the IBIS in the car was actually really good. Once again, but we turned digital image stabilization on, and you could just see around the edges, especially like the edge of the frame where the dash is, those straight lines you could see were real warpy, and once again, you can't turn it off in post. So it's emergency situation that you want to use it, otherwise I'd just keep it off. So I guess, yeah, in conclusion, it was like pretty cool to see that new software, hardware in use. Like, I think it's going to help on a lot of shoots, but you still want to, I guess, have those static shots on a tripod, but
I'm definitely keeping all my stabilizers, but it's definitely going to help me a lot for handheld work.
yeah.
Cool. Thanks for watching, guys. If you have any questions, just hit us up below. We'll answer every question. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time.
So I guess we look at the A cam, which is yours.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah.
You introing or am I introing?
What do you feel like doing?
Don't care. I just got the new Fujifilm.
He's done barrel roll. Halfway through, he was just like, nope.
And more. Fuck. How am I doing up until that point? Is the rest good?
Yeah, the whole thing's good. It's just you need to just stop talking.
Yeah.
The one thing we dislike about gimbals is how hard it is. The one thing we hate about gimbals is how...
Sweet. I reckon that worked.
Yeah.
Did you want to play it back?
No, I reckon we got it.
Sweet.